Are you ready to master your mental game so you can shoot lower scores and finally play to your potential? If so, you need to avoid these 10 mental golf mistakes, especially the last one, so you can play more consistent golf and finally lower your handicap. The first mental golf mistake that is holding so many players back is not having a consistent pre-shot routine. If you just walk up to the golf ball and have no set of rituals before it, your mind is going to get overwhelmed. You're going to go into doubt, fear, a lot of indecision, and it's one of the easiest mental golf mistakes that you can avoid. Simply develop a pre-shot routine, work on it in practice, and then that way when you go to the golf course, you have a process for every shot. You can pick the right target, you can pick the right club, and you can walk into every shot with confidence. Helen Alfredson described the importance of a pre-shot routine in the book, A Good Swing is Hard to Find. She stated, a pre-shot routine helps you build a cocoon around yourself. This is the mysterious zone that athletes refer to longingly, but there's nothing mysterious about it. You have to get in your little cocoon for every single shot so that way you are setting yourself up for success, both mentally and physically. With the right rehearsal swings, you can get your mind and body ready for every single swing. The second mental golf mistake to avoid is negative self-talk. Now, this is something I used to really struggle with, especially when I was a junior player, when I was in high school, when I was in college. After I hit some bad shots, I would berate myself, thinking that somehow it would make me play better. But what you say to yourself has a direct impact on your mindset. So be very careful about your self-talk. If you do hit a bad shot, one, remember that's part of golf, and two, never say things like, I'm a bad putter, or I suck at golf. When you personalize things, your mind is gonna really take it a lot more negatively, and it's gonna have a big impact negatively on your overall performance. So be very careful with your words because your mind is always listening. Use this rule that I adopted. If you wouldn't say it to your competitors, don't say it to yourself. Plus, nobody wants to ride around in a cart with somebody that's negative all day, so be very careful with your self-talk. Speak positively about yourself, be optimistic about your game, and chances are you're gonna have a much stronger mental game. The third mental mistake that I find so many golfers have, and one that I know I made as well in my career, was not having a game plan for the hole. If you just kind of step up on the tee box and hope for the best and don't really have a strategy for where you want the ball to go and where you need to avoid, it's going to make golf a lot more difficult. We want to give our mind a ton of clarity, and that's why the first tip, the pre-shot routine, is so important. But make sure you have a clear game plan for the round, especially if you're playing in tournaments. That's why I highly recommend using Decade Golf, because it makes it very easy to map out your course strategy, and there's some amazing fundamentals in there about course management, not to mention you can track your stats over time. But even in casual rounds, make sure when you step up on the tee box, get really clear about where the trouble is, where you want to avoid, and where you want the ball to go. Which leads me into the fourth mental golf mistake that so many players make, and that's focusing on what they don't want to happen. How many times have you heard golfers say, or maybe yourself, because I know I used to, say things like, don't go in the bunker, don't hit it out of bounds. Here's the thing, your mind needs clarity and specifics. Don't is a negative statement, which is very confusing for your mind. So we want to be very clear and direct with what we want from our performance. So it's okay to say, yeah, there is out of bounds right over there, but instead redirect our mind to say, I want to hit the ball on the left side of the green or the left side of the fairway. Your mind can act like a heat-seeking missile if you give it the right coordinates. The problem is that most of us focus on what we don't want to have happen. So instead, make sure as part of your pre-shot routine, you're always focusing on what you want. The fifth mental golf mistake to avoid is getting overly angry after bad shots. Now again, this is something I really struggled with even until the last few years. It's something that I've always had a good temper on and off the course, but it really was holding me back from playing my best golf. So when you hit a bad shot, you have to remember, one, that's part of golf. It happens to even the best players in the world, but you have to be very careful about managing your emotions. If your emotions spike after every bad shot, chances are they're not going to come back down to that baseline level before the next shot, which means you're going to have one bad shot negatively impact the next one and the next one. Please address that Hulk-like anger on the golf course because it's not helping you play your best. Now, one easy way to stop getting so mad is to have a post-shot routine. So after you hit your shot, you need to have some sort of ritual so that way you don't let one bad shot impact the next one. So one thing you can do is have a 10-step rule. I've heard of Tiger using this where he basically has 10 steps. He can be as mad as he wants. On that 11th step, it's time to focus on the next one. Another thing you can do is once the club goes back in the bag, that shot is over and it's time to focus on the next one. Before getting into my next mental golf mistake to avoid, what is the best mental tip you've ever been given? Hit the comments now and let me know. The sixth mental golf mistake to avoid is trying to focus the entire round. I have a lot of mental golf coaching students I work with and they say, hey, I just wish I could focus the entire round. In fact, you don't need to focus the entire round. We have shorter attention spans than ever, and if you try and focus for 5 or 6 hours straight, you're gonna be mentally fatigued, and that's why you'll see a lot of players really struggle on the back nine. Instead, you wanna go wide and narrow depending on where you're at during the round. So you wanna get narrow as you get closer to the golf ball. This is time where you go into your little cocoon. This is where you go into your pre-shot routine process. This is where you start to pick your targets, analyze the lie. You're getting very detailed with your shot process. Then after you hit your shot, have a post-shot routine, then go wide. You can talk about other things that aren't related to the round of golf. You can talk about sports. That's why you see a lot of caddies that they read up on sporting events and other events that are going on in the world, and they talk to that about their players in between shots so they can kind of think about other things, and then again, when they get closer, they go more narrow. So go wide and narrow throughout the round so that way you can have mental focus from the first all the way to the 18th. The seventh mental mistake you got to avoid is stop rushing to the golf course. If you pull into the parking lot like Vin Diesel in Fast and the Furious, chances are you're going to run into the clubhouse, pay for your round, barely warm up, and rush to the first tee. This can really start the round out negatively, especially if you get off to a super slow start. So control what you can. Get there at least 30 minutes early. That way you can pay, you're not going to be late for your tee time, and you're going to have time to actually get warmed up both physically and mentally. The eighth mental mistake to avoid is negative body language. If our head's down after a bad shot, if we're pouting, if we're throwing clubs and slamming clubs and just looking like a child out there, and again, I've made every mistake out there. I once threw a 5-wood into a lake, never got it back, but negative body language, just like negative self-talk, is absolutely hurting your mental game. So be very conscious of your body language even after a bad shot. There's not a lot you can control during a round of golf, but you can control what you say to yourself and how you act on the course. The goal with good body language is that if I was watching you from 100 yards away, I should have no clue if you're 5 under or 20 over. You want to have consistent body language from the first to the 18th so that way you can signal strength to your mind and have a more positive, optimistic attitude. The ninth mental mistake is letting your mind wander. If you go back to the past or into the future, it's making golf nearly impossible. So you don't want to be a time traveler on the course. If you 3-putted the first hole, it's easy to try and dwell on that on the next hole or the next hole. But we have to be 100% focused with where we're at right now. If you're dwelling on a bad shot that you hit, or if you're thinking about a nervous tee shot coming up, you're not 100% present and you're not giving the shot the focus that it needs. So stay 100% present for every single shot. And when you stop time traveling, I think it's gonna have a huge impact on your mental game and overall performance. The final mental mistake I think that is killing so many golfers is setting score goals. Now, don't get me wrong. I want you to play great every single time you go out, and I want you to be optimistic with your performance. But if you're going out there and saying, I'm gonna break 90 for the first time today, or I'm gonna break 80 for the first time, or I'm going under par today, or I'm going low, when you're doing that, you're making a hard game even more difficult. Because what happens if you get off to a super slow start? A lot of people do not have the mental fortitude to persevere, and it's easy to mentally throw in the towel. So instead of setting score goals, what I recommend to all my mental golf coaching students is I recommend being focused on your process. Have a consistent dialed routine on as many shots as you can, and that way when you focus on your process, you're gonna get the results that you want. But if you're adding up your score after every hole and you're worried about your score heading into the 18th, you're just making golf more difficult. Again, stay present, stick to your routine, and you're gonna play your best golf. For even more mental golf tips, make sure to download my free Mental Golf Playbook. It's a 13-page guide that I created to help you master your mental game. It's 100% free. You can download it by clicking the link in the description or going to wickedsmartgolf.com/playbook to download and start reading now. Make it a goal to master your mental game so you can have more fun and finally reach your potential.